I will read you the pitch that I pitched to agents that ultimately failed. I was deeply inspired by Dante's Inferno. Oh my god, that's a fucking typo! This feels like almost painful to share with you, but I hope you're enjoying it so far. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this particular one, we're going to be speaking all about my very first novel, not Theodora's Tea Shop. That one got a publishing deal. That book is coming out this year on July 28th. In this video, we're going to be speaking all about my first novel, the novel that died in the querying trenches back in 2020. That particular novel has been shrouded in so much mystery. I've never said anything about that story, not the premise, not the blurb, not the title, nothing. We're going to be speaking all about it, what it was, why it failed, what I learned from the process of having my first novel fail. I also went out onto Instagram and asked you guys, was there anything in particular that you wanted to know? And we got like 300 and something responses. So it seems like you guys are interested in this failed project of mine. So without further ado, let's jump into the video and I'm going to tell you guys all about my first novel, not Project Teacup, the novel that came before it. So I do have a bunch of your questions that I'm going to answer, but just to kick off with the context, what was this first novel? So essentially, I started writing this book. I'm wrestling with whether or not to tell you the title of the story because maybe I do want to use it one day. We're going to refer to this book from here on out as Book number 0. I came up with the concept for book number 0 when I was 16 years old. I was scrolling through Tumblr, naturally. I spent a lot of time on Tumblr at that time. And I saw this definition of a word. And that ended up being the title of the story. You know how like back in the day you would scroll through Tumblr, assuming any of you were on Tumblr back in the day. And there would be interesting words that would pop up like inui or tsundoku or something like that. It was a kind of obscure English word. And I had Dante's Inferno and that was my jumping off point. I wanted to write a fantasy story, an adult fantasy story, mind you. I was 16 and I was like, I'm gonna write adult fantasy. Was a terrible choice for me at the time. And so I set out to make this world that was basically inspired by Dante's Inferno. And so we start off with my main character who is in this land which is inspired by the third tier of hell where it constantly rains, sludge everywhere, and there was like magical creatures, and it was much, much more of a true fantasy story. Like we have this main character, she is a lost princess. I came up with it when I was 16. Lost princess, abandoned, she eventually fights a scary monster, gets out, rediscovers her homeland, and she meets these beautiful people and there are fairies. There were so many problems with this story where I had seer mean not a person who can see the future, but it was that sight was a very unique part of the magic system and it was completely different to seeing the future. And I knew even when I was like 17, 18, 19 writing and rewriting the story, I knew that would be a problem and I was like, nah, it's fine, don't worry about it, it's totally fine. I will read you the pitch that I pitched to agents that ultimately failed, so we'll get there in a second so you will hear the proper premise of the story. So essentially the TLDR of this whole thing is that when I was 16, I was deeply inspired by Dante's Inferno and a couple of other things, and I wanted to write a really kind of classic fantasy story about a young girl who's like 17, 18 years old, who is a lost, abandoned princess who then ends up going and living in this beautiful pastoral land, and she needs to end up going back to her like kingdom, and there's this whole secret conspiracy around her family and why she was abandoned, and I really liked the world building in this story. I won't tell you about the very cool village that she ends up living in because that specifically I will reuse at some point. The village that she lived in, that will be in something. One of the, I think, more basic things that I did is that I made the city that the royalty live in was very, very much defined by class, and so there were literal class tiers, and so I think it was kind of inspired by Ba Sing Se, and I was reading a lot of One Piece. I got to the Impel Down arc of One Piece and I was so upset because that is a prison based on Dante's Inferno, and that was basically the idea that I had already had, but it was executed obviously way better in One Piece. It was this story that had a lot of interesting little bits. I think the story fell down in a lot of ways. I ended up querying it when I was 24, so that's about 8 years. 8 years on this. I wrote and rewrote the book. It had problems. I'd throw it out, I'd start again, I'd rewrite it. It was a lot of time that I spent on this story, and so I queried it I think April 2020. Like literally, I was ready to go just as the pandemic hit. And I think it was about August of that year that I finally realized that the novel had failed and I needed to write something else. And so going through my emails, I have a little folder for this book. And I can tell you that the number of queries I sent were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I sent 14 queries. 14 queries is a very, very small number. I sent a lot more for Theodora's t-shirt when I went and queried that. But I knew by the time I was getting to my 14th rejection, I knew that the story was doomed and that it had been a failure. And we'll get into all of that when I answer your questions in a second, how I decided it was a failure, what that process was like. Fundamentally, I spent 8 years writing and rewriting a story, which was probably from the beginning pretty much doomed because the pitch wasn't very good. But before we jump into what that pitch was, something that is very good is browsing the internet safely, which brings me to the sponsor of this video, Surfshark. Surfshark is a virtual private network or VPN that helps to encrypt your data and keep you safe. I really, really love working out in public when I'm working on one of my novels, which means that I spend a lot of time in cafes or libraries using public Wi-Fi, and public Wi-Fi is one of the easiest places for your data to be intercepted. And so online security and privacy are really, really important, especially for those of us who spend a lot of time traveling or being creative out of the house. In addition to encrypting your data and keeping you safe, Surfshark is also really, really good for people who don't like being region locked out of content that they want to enjoy. Surfshark has over 4,500 different servers in over 100 countries. So that means that if you're traveling away from your home country and you want to access something that's available to the place that you're from, you can pop over to Surfshark, select your home country, and then view that content as if you were back home, or vice versa. You can access stuff from different places using Surfshark. Surfshark also has unlimited devices across your account, so you can use it on your computer, your phone, your tablet, and one of my favorite parts is that it comes with Surfshark Antivirus, which offers 24/7 malware protection and also webcam protection as well. Surfshark is perfect for creatives or for anyone who wants to keep their devices safe. Go to surfshark.com/ChristyAnnJones or use my code ChristyAnnJones at the checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. And now that our internet safety is taken care of, let me read to you my pitch. Oh my god, my pitch for my novel. So dear agent, I'm reaching out to you as I believe you would be interested in my adult fantasy novel title, complete at 120,000 words with serious potential. I believe my novel would appeal to readers who love V.E. Schwab's A Darker Shade of Magic or Naomi Novik's Spinning Silver. Particularly, I'm excited to reach out to you as I noticed that your Twitter cover is from House Moving Castle. Like the film, my novel contains a rich and colourful world, a strong emphasis on magic, and intriguing, nuanced characters who develop throughout the narrative. That novel was not a comparison for House Moving Castle, but anyway. Oh, it's a bit embarrassing. Okay, it's fine. In infancy, our main character is kidnapped from her affluent home and abandoned in a hellish wasteland of eternal rain filled with dangerous magical creatures. This character grows up comforting herself by learning to make maps. That's wild. We'll get back to that. Completely forgotten that this character also likes maps, so that's very, very funny. While pining for her royal family, her warrior mother, and gentle bookish father. Now an adult, this character's encounter with a terrifying wraith sets her free. She finds herself in the really, really cool village that I'm not going to tell you too much about because I want to use that one day. The hidden home of the human seers and fairies, where she finally finds her magic. But as she assimilates back into this world, this character learns that her royal family are not who she remembers them to be, and that there are secrets underpinning every facet of the world she thought she knew. Why are their villagers disappearing from their maps? Who was the man with the strange tattoo who abandoned her in the sludge and sleet? There is a dark mystery here in this land of magic and deceit. Oh yeah, that rhymes. After all, a royal child as celebrated and adored as she does not go missing by accident. In my spare time, I run a book writing and lifestyle themed YouTube channel with 50,000 subscribers. I have a bachelor's degree in marketing. I don't know why I mentioned that. It's not particularly relevant here. Graduate diploma in creative writing. That was my half a master's degree I did because I dropped out because I picked the YouTube channel over the master's degree. Currently, I work in digital marketing at my workplace. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. Kindest regards, Christy Ann Jones. And then we have the synopsis of the story, and we have the first 3 chapters. Oh my god. I'll read you the first page of the book. To the reader, this is a kind of prologue. The earth falls quiet here. The sparrows have fled and the clock stopped ticking. Silence. Rarely do we pay enough attention to silence. It speaks the truth. It waits for us in the empty space between this second and the next and catches us when we are unsuspecting. when we pass through mossy tunnels or into the houses of mutual friends who regard us as strangers, or while we wait in line at the market to purchase bread and apples, the tyranny of silence rips us from comfort, throws us to remembrance and leaves us to dwell upon the things we did, the things we regret, and the things that are coming for us yet. We run from it for this very reason, and my dearest reader, I have been running for decades. I am, finally, writing to tell you the story of character's full name. In the piercing honesty of this noiseless shack, I carved these words on the page. Yet, now that I've taken up my writer's chair, poured my tea, and chosen my second favourite pen, I realise again, as I have realised many times before, that this is a trial too difficult to face. Instead, I stall. I notice the condensation that forms against the lilacs painted onto this porcelain teacup. I realise that the desk wobbles each time I lean upon it. I watch my hands, skin that was once soft and beautiful, now worn, weathered and waning. My apologies. I need not digress and waste your time. Where should we begin? Perhaps with the impetus for this journey. I was drowning in a murky, bottomless slumber when she came to me all those years ago. The girl, grown beyond childhood, was merely a shadow of the bouncing, bright little character's name we seen in the newspapers. Oh my god, that's a fucking typo! We had seen... Oh, how embarrassing. Oh, okay. We had seen in the newspapers. Now standing above me, weathered in rags, she was a spectre, gaunt with faded freckles. She was short too, far smaller than anyone could have expected. Yet despite this, some facets remained. Her hair, the same as her father's, was the colour of fresh blood, and her eyes the placid hue of willow bark. That was the first page. I cannot believe there was a typo on the first page. That is genuinely so embarrassing. Jumping into your questions, what was the story about? So I think that we've covered a little bit of that. Basically, it was a story about a young girl, I think 17 years old, who was abandoned, and then she goes on this journey to rediscover the land that she's actually from. She ends up going off to the royal city and meeting her family and discovering that actually there's a lot of secrets going on here. There's a lot of buried trauma in there. There's some creepy stuff. So we can see some of the things that would end up being in my work later on, but really the premise of the story is not particularly, or at least the way that I wrote that pitch was not particularly bold or unique. It was a kidnapped princess wakes up and she's incredibly beautiful and she's got this blood red, bright red hair, and she rediscovers the world, and there was nothing particularly unique about that pitch. And then especially getting into the first chapter, I can really see that I was young. I can really see some inexperience, both in the way I was writing that and also in the way that I pitched that. Oh my god, okay, this feels like almost painful to share with you, but I hope you're enjoying it so far. What was the most common cause for the rejection? So again, there were only 14 rejections in total, so 14 queries sent. A bunch of those people hadn't replied because oftentimes they don't reply. That specific pitch that I just read out, she came back and was really helpful, really lovely. She actually requested the book. So she requested the book and one other person requested the book. So of the 14 queries sent, 2 people asked for the book. I think the prose was strong enough to get interest, basically. They got the book and they realized that it was actually a dumpster fire. And so that agent came back and said, look, structurally it's missing a bunch of stuff. I don't think this is the book for me. And then a bunch of the other agents basically said, thank you very much, it's just not for me. I would have trouble selling this, that kind of thing. Was it the quality of the work or advertising efforts that stopped this story? Good question. I think it was the quality of the work. Back in 2020 when I queried this, that I've got 50,000 subs on YouTube was worth a lot more than 50,000 worth a lot more than 50,000 subs are worth today. So keep in mind that because people's attention spans were less fractured back in 2020 even than they are now, that audience meant a lot more back then. But obviously no one cared about the following, even though I did mention it. Again, that happened again. I sent so many queries to people. I was querying for months and months and months. And for querying Theodora's tea shop, I told all the agents that I had a YouTube channel. Still got ignored by a lot of people. If that makes you feel any better, you don't need a YouTube channel in order to get a good agent or a publishing deal. You absolutely don't. So advertising efforts, no. And a lot of these questions really were, what was so bad about the book and what went wrong and why didn't it work? But I think to sum it all up, basically, the book just wasn't good enough. Like, I came up with an idea that wasn't really interesting enough or bold enough, that wasn't marketable enough really. And I sat with that story for years and years and years and years. I kind of had the sunk cost fallacy thing where I was like, well, I've put 5 years into this. I've put 6 years into this. I really, really love this. I really care about this. And so I found it really hard to step away from. I'd also heard that a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't try and ever query your first novel. And I heard that and I was like, that's not going to be me. I'm going to query my first novel. I'll be an exception to the rule. And I wasn't. The first book was so bad. Like, there are bits that are good about it. There are bits that I'm proud of with it. And I'm so grateful because I learned so much from it. But the actual book is not very good. What do you think is the biggest reason it didn't work? Bad concept writing. Yeah, so basically it just wasn't an interesting pitch. It wasn't an interesting story. When did you know it wasn't salvageable? I have this really strong memory of like 3 months after I started querying. I remember going for a walk with Tyler during 2020 and we had really, really strict lockdowns. And so there was a period of time where we were only allowed outside for like an hour a day and we were in a tiny, tiny apartment, right? I don't know if this was at that time or not, but I remember going for a walk and us just like talking about it for like that full hour that we were on our walk, a daily allotted time to go outside, just talking it through and talking about like really like what is the problem with this story. And I'm so grateful that I didn't approach this from any amount of ego. Like, I was like, you know what? I think I can do better. I think seeing some of these rejections, there's absolute validity to what they're saying. Yes, structurally it's not good, but also I realized that fundamentally I was pitching a YA novel, but I wanted to be an adult fantasy author. And there is a really, really big difference between the types of stories you're telling as an adult author versus a YA author, the lengths, the ages of the character, the tone. And you could say like, oh, well, if it was a YA story, why didn't you want to approach it as a YA story? And the thing is that there was a lot of complexity there. I wanted a really, really big word count. I really wanted to go really, really intricately with the story in a way that you don't tend to do with YA as much. However, it was my young adult brain that came up with the concept of the story. So the concept was fundamentally YA, but I could see what I wanted to achieve with adult fantasy. And so I couldn't really bridge the gap between what I was capable of at the time and where I wanted to be. So I got that rejection and I was like, I think this is dead. I think I need to go and do something else. And then the final nail in the coffin was that day in like June or July that I vlogged because I had this intention to make the submission video the entire time. Like, I've been planning to make a video of submitting my book to publishers and agents and all of that since like 2018. I was like, I'm gonna make a video about this. And so I vlogged that first little bit. In that clip that I shared not unrecently, I got that rejection and I was like, well, yeah, the book is dead. Let's get up and write something else because I think that this is not going anywhere. Flossie asked, will you ever revisit the story and try publishing it? No, I will never try publishing it. I don't want to read it. Just reading that first page to you was painful enough. Oh my God, I cannot believe there's a typo in it. That's so upsetting and kind of embarrassing, but like, I do not have an eye for picking up typos like that. Like, that is not my skill set at all. I need help with that kind of thing, which is why when you put out a published novel, you have editors and you have copy readers and you have all these people who help you catch those kinds of mistakes. No, I will never try publishing that story. Do you think that COVID affected your chances and will you ever go on submission with it again? COVID very much could have affected it. I think it maybe made responses a little bit slower. I think that a lot of people got into lockdown and they were like, okay, I really need to write a book. Now's my time. I think that I had finished the book early on enough that that influx probably hadn't started yet. So I don't think COVID affected my chances that much, aside from probably there being a bit of agent anxiety around that time of like what's going on with the industry and, you know, the world generally, because any kind of economic instability is going to affect your ability to get deals in X, Y, and Z. Why do you say it has failed? Is there no hope of resuscitation? No, she's dead. She's dead. It's dead. It's not going anywhere. I think really I have a very neutral relationship with the word failed and failure. I think that failure and rejection are very, very natural parts of the creative process. I think that there really is no place for ego when it comes to creating art. I think that when we look at rejection and failure, it has to be about the work. It cannot be about us. And that's the easiest way to tackle all of this kind of thing, because failures will come. Rejections will come. I still get things rejected all the time. I got an amazing publisher publishing deal. And since that amazing publishing deal, I've had short stories rejected. I've had fellowships rejected. So many things have happened where I've faced many, many, many rejections. And so rejections and failures really are a natural part of this. And I think the book is in and of itself a failure from a commercial perspective, because that book is never ever going to see the light of day. I'm sure of that. Never going to see the light of day. However, I gained so much from it, and I learned how to write off of that story, and I learned how to do dialogue, and I learned how to refine my prose a bit and to do imagery and to plot a story, and I learned so much from that. So really it wasn't a failure in that sense that I learned so much. Yeah, I'm so comfortable calling that book a failure, and failure is a natural part of this, and that's okay. Would you self-publish it? God, no, I'm not subjecting you guys to that book. Thank you. Again, there's been so many lovely comments here of people saying like, just self-publish it, we'll read it. That is a beautiful sentiment. I don't want you to read it because I don't think it's not the caliber of the stories that I want to produce. And I think that that is a good thing for me to know, for me to be aware of. What did this novel teach you about your writing? So I think that the biggest thing that it taught me was building up the creative resilience to write big projects. So that first story was 120,000 words. Theodora's Tea Shop is 123,000 words, I think, is where we finished up with that book. Project Spiegel Tent, is going to end up being 70,000 words, which is very, very, very short for me. I'm used to writing bigger projects. And with that first story, Book Zero, I threw it in the bin and started again, and threw it in the bin and started again, and threw it in the bin and started again. And so I really built up that ability to ruthlessly rewrite my own work. I built up the ability to write large amounts of words, because if you've never done this before and you sit down and you go, okay, I'm going to write 70,000 words, it's a lot of words. It feels really, really difficult. Like you wouldn't just run a marathon without doing any training, right? So it's like building up the stamina to write that much is really, really important, and it's very, very difficult to do. And so I learned how to do that. I learned a bit about characterization. Really, I also just learned about the importance of having a really good, strong pitch from the beginning. Are you glad it's failed? Great question. I am so happy that it failed. I am so happy that that book will never see the light of day, because although there are bits about that story that I think are admirable, there are bits that I'm proud of, it would have been polished a lot with a literary agent and then with a publisher, so it wouldn't have been the same as it was as I read it to you just then. I am so incredibly glad that it failed, because Theodora's Tea Shop is the most proud I've ever been of anything in my life. I genuinely think that book is good. And when I say good, I think it is everything that I wanted to write. It is everything that I set out to do in a story. I'm proud of the structure, the plot, the characters, the prose, all of it. And I know that Theodora's Tea Shop, naturally, by virtue of the fact that all tastes are subjective, not everyone is going to adore Theodora's Tea Shop. It's going to be not cozy enough for some people. It's going to be too emotional for some people. Maybe some people will really, really love it, and that would be really great. But no matter what happens with that, I am incredibly proud of that story. It's everything I wanted to write. And so I have nothing left to, like, that one's good. That's good. Book number 0 wasn't good. How long did it take before you were writing again after the initial failure? And so I think with that moment, that sort of drop dead moment of like, this book has failed, it was that night. That night I sat down and I was like, we're starting typing something new. And when I start writing a novel, I'm not like chapter 1, here's the thing. I start with throwaway documents, with bits of imagery, with like little scribbles about things. And so basically there was no downtime. I was heartbroken about the story failing because I'd spent so many years on it. I'd been writing it since I was 16, as I said, and I went through some diabolical stuff during those years, and I held on to that book so fiercely, and that's part of the reason why I spent 8 years on something that I knew didn't have a good premise, that I knew didn't have a good pitch. I knew there were problems from the outset. I was worried for years that it was a YA concept that I was trying to force into being an adult novel. Again, even when I was 18, 19 years old, like I was the YA category, and I was still like, no, I really think I want to lean more towards adult fantasy. And to my credit, that is where I want to sit in my career. I want to write speculative fiction that appeals to adults as my main thing. And then eventually, I think I'd like to write a middle grade story. I think I would like to write a picture book. But my main thing that I want to write is adult speculative fiction. And so I had the vision from a young age, even though I didn't, again, have the execution. Carolyn asks, how did you know what to work/improve on when writing your next project, Project Teacup? There were things that I was really quite proud of, but I think the main thing that I took away from it was that I don't ever want to start a story again without having a good pitch and a title, because I couldn't find a title for that novel. So the title that I ended up querying with was not the title that I'd called the story for the previous 8 years. And again, the pitch just wasn't interesting or bold enough. So with Theodora's Tea Shop, the pitch of that is very much, we have a young woman who's chronically ill who goes off to the city of Aliasta to meet an enigmatic, charming witch who is hiding secrets. This is a world full of demons and spirits where magic is illegal, and when these two women collide, it threatens to topple Theodora's empire and take them all with it. It's 1920s, it's atmospheric. That's a really interesting pitch to me. That's a really interesting blurb to me. We've got a young woman who goes and works at a creepy arts festival that's hiding stuff. That's not something that's been done very often, so that's a good pitch. That's very strong. For book number 0, we have a princess who has been kidnapped, which again has just been done so many times. And I kind of love that. I kind of love how almost campy and self-indulgent that premise is, because that was the kind of thing that I loved when I was a child. The idea of princesses and fairies and ballerinas. I love that. I love to return to that concept eventually, but it was just not interesting enough to grab anyone, and so my execution of that was not very good. I will never ever start another novel without knowing that I have a good title and a good pitch, and if I'm writing the story and the pitch changes, that's fine, but if the pitch changes, it would only ever be to make the thing cooler, not to make it, more convoluted or more difficult to understand. Was there any character from that book that has been modified and added to Theodora's? So I would have told you no. When I screenshotted this person's question, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. I didn't take anything, any facet from any character. But what's hilarious is in the pitch for that story, which I just read to you, it mentions that the main character is interested in maps. And my main focalizing character in Theodora's Tea Shop is also obsessed with maps. And what's really interesting there is that I don't really care about maps. I think maps are interesting as a tool that we've used. Subconsciously, I was just like, oh, the main character needs to be interested in maps. That has to be one of the shticks of the character. So reading that just now, that really, really surprised me because I'd forgotten that was in there. But aside from that one tiny little thing, no characters are in any way inspired by the characters in that story. They're all their own characters. They have their own names. Nothing has been recycled at all. If Tea Shop had have been rejected, what would you have done? The exact same thing that I did when book 0 got rejected. I got up and I started writing a new novel. When I was querying Theodora's Tea Shop, when I went on submission with Theodora's Tea Shop, I went through these periods of time where I was certain the book had failed, and that really, really affected my mental health. I was so upset because, again, Theodora's Tea Shop, I put everything into that story. I'm so proud of it. It's the best thing I've ever made. And I sort of had this real feeling of, if this is the best thing I'm capable of and this can't get a deal, I don't know how I'm ever going to achieve this dream. But I'm still going to keep fighting for it no matter what. I've never really, really considered giving up on this. Even though I have had a couple of days here and there where I've been like, maybe this is a bit too painful. Maybe I'm not quite emotionally resilient enough to deal with all of this rejection. We've had so many things where we've almost achieved the thing and then it's fallen through, and that's happened again, then it's fallen through. Da, 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 da. When I was writing the first couple of drafts of Project Spiegel Tent, I was certain Theodora's Tea Shop had failed, and so I was wrestling with the grief of that and just pushing through with Project Spiegel Tent. And if Theodora's Tea Shop had truthfully 100% failed, I knew that Spiegel Tent was going to have to be my debut novel, and I thought that maybe Spiegel Tent was a bit too kooky and weird to be that debut novel. I wasn't really sure that was a smart move from a branding perspective, and that might be so silly to say. I have no idea. So yeah, if Tea Shop had have failed, I would have just gotten up and worked on Spiegel Tent, and if Spiegel Tent had have failed, or if it fails, we're going to go on submission at some point with that story, and it might fail. There's no guarantee that's going to get a publishing deal necessarily. I'll just write another book, and then if that fails, I'll write another book, and I'll just keep going. I'll be here forever, just in case anyone wants to know. So this want to write stories, to write big, bold stories with messy, interesting characters in really expansive worlds, this is my thing. This is what I'm here for, basically. So I'll be here forever. So I'm hoping that I was able to give you some insight into that first novel and why it failed and what I learned from it. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that something has failed. I think failure is a very, very normal part of this. So happy to share my failures with you guys if it means that you can learn something or if you find it entertaining or interesting at all. Theodora's Tea Shop, my novel which didn't fail, is going to be out on July 28th, 2026. Pre-orders are available now if you're outside the UK, Australia or New Zealand, so literally any other country. You can go to Blackwell's to pre-order it. And finally, I just wanted to thank the beautiful people over on Patreon, because without those people, I would not be able to sit here making these videos as my job. Over on Patreon, we have a whole bunch of lovely bonus content, bonus videos, our book club, our Discord server. I post voice notes now. That's a new thing I've been doing recently. And yeah, if you'd like to check out Patreon, there's a link in the description down below. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.